Subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell icon for the latest film interviews, features, and recommendations on the movies that matter. Very, very welcome, Reenadi. Welcome to the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne Film Club. This is our second session, and this year, this is the 11th year of the festival, but this year, the lead up to the festival is a little bit different. We're conducting conversations with some of the most accomplished, some of our favorite filmmakers who made important films and films that we love dearly. And I'm going to just very quickly, personally kind of explain what your cinema means to me. I think for me, I was a teenager when I saw 36 Chowringhee Lane. And really it was the first film, I distinctly remember, it was the first Indian film that kind of showed me that there was more to Indian cinema beyond, beyond Bollywood, beyond the song and dance format. That beautiful story of loneliness, that beautiful performance by Jennifer Kandal, a very, very assured storytelling. I remember it sort of ushered in me a love for cinema beyond the mainstream, and for that I am forever grateful. And that was just the beginning of the love affair with your cinema, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this. That your cinema has deeply influenced and impacted many of the cinephiles who are on this chat. So really, thank you so much, Reenadi, for being on this chat today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Rajeev. And thank you, Melbourne Film Festival, for this. I would have gone last time, but I just couldn't.
Well, hopefully you'll be there. Yes, next time. I know that your films have played at the festival. I remember the time that I remember reading about the time that Goinar Baksho actually screened at IFFM. And Konkana, who was of course one of the leading ladies of the film, represented the film at the festival. During this chat today, Reenadi, we're going to be we're going to have cinephiles from all over, mostly Australia, of course, but also from New Zealand, also from Fiji, Indonesia, Malaysia, and of course India. I'm going to jump in straight and ask you, Reenadi, how have you been, and how has this period of lockdown been for you?
Oh, well, actually, I've been fairly busy. I don't know how the world managed to keep me so busy even during lockdown, because what I was doing was every single day, I was reading translations, mostly of Bengali poems, because I wanted to introduce Bengali poets to all those people who can't read Bangla or understand Bangla, because I really feel that we have some absolutely fantastic poets, Tagore, of course, but apart from Tagore, there are some wonderful poets who deserve to be known all over the world.
How lovely. Weren't you also in pre-production on a new film? Weren't you sort of prepping it for shoot that was meant to happen in June, I think? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It was, but sort of as they say, man proposes, God disposes. In this case, COVID disposes. So there was nothing we could do.
Is it too early to ask what the new film is going to be about?
I think it's too early, yes.
Okay.
But it's going to be about, well, it's about rape and capital punishment, but it's a human story. It's not dark or it's not anything like that. It's really a human story about human beings.
Right. You've been an actor since the mid-50s. You started directing with 36 Chowringhee Lane in 1980.
Not it's my first film ever, my debut as an actor.
Right.
That was in 1961.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. In the mid-50s. I'm not as old as you think, Rajeev.
No. Not at all. You started at 61, and in 61 you started acting. 36 Chowringhee Lane became the first film that you directed in 81. What is it about filmmaking that gets the juices going? What is it about that? I know it is one of the great loves, but what's kept the passion alive all these years?
I think first of all, the love of writing. Even in school, I was very fond of writing. I mean, I was actually pretty good at writing, and English literature was one of my favorite subjects, but Bengali too. But I think what happened was I got so fed up with the kind of, acting in the kind of cinema that I didn't believe in.
Mm.
Because we had been exposed to world cinema. I was a film society kid. My parents were all founder members of along with Satyajit Ray. My father, Chidananda Dasgupta, was the founder of the Calcutta Film Society. So we grew up on world cinema. And
Right.
when you grew up on world cinema, then and the kind of cinema that used to be made when I was an actor was very different from what is being made now. Now
Mm.
the dividing line between so-called art cinema and so-called, mainstream cinema has blurred a lot. Uh, so now people are not that interested in formula type of films. They're much more interested. Story is king much more now. So at that time, it wasn't there. We were asked to do all the strange things, act coy, flutter our eyelashes, and look down and archly up at the hero. And I just hated it. I only liked comedy. That's the only thing that I like doing. So when I started writing, I said, I can't be doing this. Let me just distract myself by writing a short story. And that became 36 Chowringhee Lane, because it wouldn't remain a short story. It just started turning itself into a script. I couldn't help it. At one point, I caught myself writing dissolve. So, and then I said, no, no, no. This wants to be a script. I can't make it a short story. So it became a script. And then I think the very fact that as an actor, you're participating in someone else's vision,
Mm.
which is fine. I mean, particularly if you believe in that vision. And when you're a director, it's your own vision that is coming to life with the aid of actors, music director, editor, cinematographer, all the people who participate, with all of us together creating something that is actually your own vision.
Mm.
That, I think, is what really keeps me going.
But you've continued to act even after you became filmmaker, after you became a director.
Yeah.
No, but you've made some incredible acting choices. I mean, even the films that you did with Rituparna Ghosh, of course, Titli, Unishi April, they're great performances. I want to ask whether whether the filmmaker ever, how do you sort of suppress the filmmaker within you when you're acting for other directors? And do sometimes when you have what you believe is a better idea, is every director open to that?
Well, with Ritu Porno, we were very close, and
Hmm.
I knew the script of Unishi April inside out, and in fact, he asked me to do up the bedroom. I mean, decorate the bedroom that I was supposed to be my bedroom. I now realize it was one of his ways. Perhaps he didn't even know it, but it was one of his ways to kind of get me more involved in the role. But I was
Hmm.
already involved. I knew the role inside out. And Ritu, of course, was very open to suggestions from me always. But not all directors are. And I don't usually act unless I'm convinced about, the director's. Some choices have regretted also. You know, some choices have regretted, some acting choices. When you can't get out of it, you think, oh, okay, these people are so close to me, and they are all my younger colleagues, and sometimes you think, oh, it's going to be a picnic,
Right.
and we are all going to have a lot of fun. Okay, theek hai, chalo, kar lete hain.
Hmm.
That kind of thing also happens.
What is it like directing yourself, as you frequently do? Most recently in
Horrible,
Sonata.
horrible, horrible. I hate it. I hate it. Because you're always running around, you can't concentrate, you don't have the benefit of your own supervision.
Hmm.
Even though we have a very good casting director and acting coach called Shohag Sen, who's a theatre person, even so, you can't see yourself. So I have to keep running to the monitor and running back again, and telling them what to do, thinking of my acting and thinking of how I'm going to plan this shot, where I'm going to cut, whether it's going to be a trolley, or whether, we are going to sort of have the camera on top, coming down slowly, a jib, or whatever it is. You're deciding all that and you're concentrating on your acting. It's not very nice. The only film where I actually enjoyed acting was Paromitar Ek Din,
Right.
where it was the condition of the producer that I have to do that role. Otherwise, it was a deal breaker.
But it was such a beautiful part.
Well, yes. My mother actually, uh, when I'd first written it, I said, I can't do this. This is not me, this character is not me. My mother said, see, whatever you do, and this is, of course, a mother speaking, maybe she's biased, she was biased. She said, it's very difficult for you to look unintelligent. So you can make the character not, academically educated, but she has common sense. She has a lot of intelligence and personality. So why don't you just rewrite the character a little bit so that, that intelligence and personality comes through. So which is what I did, took my mother's advice. And I enjoyed actually doing that part. But we had workshopped for that film, acting workshops for a whole month. So that helped.
Really, how did your acting sort of inform your filmmaking? Because you work with some great filmmakers. I mean, you work with Ray on Teen Kanya, Ranyer Din Ratri, among some other great directors. How did the acting inform the directing?
Well, actually, working with Ray, or rather observing Ray, actually, when I first worked with him in Shamapti, I was far too young. I was in class 8. I think I started the film when I was 14, and by the time it was released, I think I was 15. So I was really too young to observe anything about filmmaking. I did observe that he, in the scene where she gradually becomes, from child she turns to woman, he kept changing the lighting. He had this close shot and he kept changing the lighting. And I was wondering, why is he just changing the lighting? So, I am as curious as a cat. So I've always been very curious about the process of filmmaking. I never shut my eyes to it. I also, Raji, very importantly learned what not to do.
Very important as well, yeah.
Very importantly, learned what not to do. And from Ray, I think I got all that love of detail, which I think I had it in me in any case, when if you ever were to come to my house, my husband and I, we're great lovers of art and craft. And, I like to, a lot of people say your house is like a museum. So I say, I like living in a museum. So I always, even in my own films, even now to this day, I am absolutely, completely involved in the production design. There are lots of films where I do the production design myself.
Your last film, Reenati, as director was, which came out last year in November. Ghawre, please correct me if I'm.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj. Is it fair to say that film sort of completed this trilogy of films that you made about religious intolerance, if you like, starting with Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, and then Arshi Nagar, which came out in 2015. It is also, I mean, it's not just about religious intolerance, Ghawre Bairey Aaj, because it's about so many other things. It's your most political film. It deals with right-wing politics, and to be fair, you actually present the other side of the argument as well. You talk about mob lynchings. You talk about nationalism. The murder of Gauri Lankesh, you've said, was the trigger.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? And when sort of your films became sort of political? You've said, I read an interview that you gave to The Hindu, where you said, I can't make sweet romantic films or light-hearted films anymore.
No, I can't. Because the times have changed. I think if Ray had lived today, he wouldn't have been able to make films like the Opoo trilogy anymore. Because that was an innocent world. And the world that we live in today is no longer an innocent world. I remember when, very early on when I was a child and when we went to the airport, there was nothing like checking. There was nothing like, security. You didn't have to go through any security. In fact, you could almost go up to the plane The visitors were allowed to almost go up to the actual aircraft. It was a different world altogether. And that world has changed suddenly very, very fast. I think it's really changed after two events. One is the Babri Masjid, the demolition of the Babri Masjid, and the other is the demolition of the Twin Towers.
Right.
You know, Hindu fundamentalism and Islamic fundamentalism at their worst. So now, I think it's a very perceptive comment that you just made, Rajiv, when you say that does it is a kind of a trilogy, because actually I've been very, very worried about the communal lack of harmony in our country, and I've been writing about it in my magazine that I used to edit called Shananda ever since the demolition of the Babri Masjid. And uh, in fact, Ritu Porno had once commented that at least 60% of the editorials were about that. Uh, so when I was going to make Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, it was not supposed to be a Hindu girl and a Muslim man. It was just supposed to be a love story on a journey, because I felt physical journey was a very good metaphor for an internal journey. Because during a journey, things happen, people change, their ideas change, they discover unexpected sides about themselves and about their fellow passengers, and so on and so forth. So I made the bus a kind of mini India. The bus was a kind
Right.
of mini
Right.
India. Yeah. And and I think it started with that. It started with that film. And then even in Arshi Nogod, you're absolutely right that I went on, because I've always felt that, and I've said this in Ghawre Bairey Aaj, what about those Muslims who chose to stay back in India instead of going to Pakistan? Because they stayed back because they chose to live in a secular country. They didn't choose to live in a Hindu state. Now, the thing is, our country has always been very anti-Muslim. Now, the moment you say anything pro-Muslim, you're supposed to be, anti-national. That's ridiculous. Because when you say anything against the British, you're not called anti-national. It's the British who looted us. The Muslims came and made their home here. In fact, they contributed a lot. We have a lot that we got from them also. But no one looks at history. They're not even bothered with history, actually. They never even consider that, for instance, we never would have got algebra if it hadn't been for it. It originated with the Muslims. So these are some of the things that I think people don't even think about. All they think about is actually the Mongols, or the Mongols and the Huns and the Mughals. Some of the Mughal emperors were very cruel. There's no doubt about that. But that was all in the past. Now, together, Hindus and Muslims fought to free India from the British. We must never forget that. That's a very important thing to remember. And some of our most wonderful instances is, for instance, Bhim Sen Joshi singing Jai Mata Vilamba Tyajite. He's singing this hymn to Saraswati. And not Bhim Sen Joshi, I beg your pardon, Amir Khan, being a Muslim. Some of the actors that we adore are Muslims. Some of our best cricketers are Muslims. So, Hindus and Muslims are actually, they are brothers. They're brothers and sisters. I've always felt that. And I think that, dividing the country along religious lines will only harm us. Tagore had this vision a long time ago, but somehow we seem to have lost that vision now. But you're right that those three films form a kind of a trilogy.
How easy or not is it to make political films in the current climate, Reenathi?
Nobody said anything. I mean, I got an uncut A. Of course, I would get an A because it was about there was murder and there was uh, adultery and all of that and bed scenes. So one didn't expect not to get an A, but it was an uncut A. And the censor board people, the censor, I mean, that particular committee loved the film. They said it's a very good film. We don't want to cut it. So we're going to give you an A certificate. And the thing is that I don't know how difficult. It depends. Maybe because it was a Bengali film, there was not such a problem. Also, Rajiv, you have to remember that I never mentioned any party.
Right.
I never mentioned a single political party. I was not talking about any political party. I was talking about an idea of India. Now, if any political party chose to take it upon themselves, then they would be committing themselves, wouldn't they?
Right. Right. As lofty as this sounds, Reenadi, what, in your opinion, is the responsibility of the filmmaker today?
Filmmakers have always responded to what's happening around them. Why only filmmakers? Painters, poets, authors, sculptors, everybody. Think about Picasso's Guernica. It is the artists always respond to what is happening around them. If they don't, then they're making films as a kind of, it's a kind of convenience. It's something that they want to sell. If they're true to themselves, if they have any conscience, then they are likely to respond. Did you ever see Mephisto, the film made by did you see Mephisto?
No. But I
It's
should.
very interesting. Yeah, it was a very interesting film about the Third Reich, where the actor says that Istvan Szabo made it actually.
Yeah.
And the actor says that I'm just an actor. I don't have to take sides. I don't have to take sides. And finally, he becomes the puppet of the Third Reich. Then they manipulate you. Now, I'm not willing to be manipulated.
Does it make you unpopular?
Perhaps. But I'm not looking out for popularity, not at this point. I've had my share of popularity as an actor.
Of course.
I do. Why did I give it all up? Just to become popular again. I gave it up because I wanted to make films according to my conscience, according to my beliefs. And of course, these would be human stories. I'm not talking about, messages, quote unquote messages. I don't do that. I don't care for that, because it is not a pulpit from where we are preaching. It's telling the story of the individual, but telling the story of the individual in the context of that time. Even in Ghawre Bairey Aaj, if you think about the original Ghawre Bairey, Rabindranath's Ghawre Bairey, a lot of people have told me, why did you make it political? But I don't think they've read Rabindranath's Ghawre Bairey. Because the most important, if these three characters, Nikhilesh, Sandeep and Bimola, are the three protagonists, the fourth protagonist is politics. That story does not exist without politics, but it was the politics of that time, of when there was a freedom struggle. But I'm setting it in today's context, so I'm talking about the politics of today, and not even politics. I don't even talk about politics really. I really talk about an idea of India that I love, that I think is under threat.
It's interesting what you said about finding the humanism in the story, and my and what immediately comes to me is Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, because of course it's about about religious intolerance, but really what it actually is a story of humanism, of humanity, isn't it? She saves this man out of humanity, not, I mean, she's this Brahmin girl, and of course his religion stands for everything that she's taught to not like, but that moment where she saves him is in response to the help that he provided, and the fact that it's an act of humanity and kindness, isn't it?
Absolutely, because you surprise yourself sometimes. I personally believe that there is humanity. At least I would like to believe
Yes.
that humanity still exists. Because if I didn't, then I might as well commit suicide.
That's true. How would we go through lives if we didn't believe in that? Yes. I want to take you back to 36 Chowringhee Lane, and this is almost a sort of fan question. What was that like? I mean, do you have memories of making that film? It was your first film as director. Your producer was, of course, the late, great Shashi Kapoor, who I'm guessing you knew through the Merchant Ivory films. Didn't you make Bombay
Yes,
Talkie with him?
absolutely. That's right. That's
Um,
Bombay Talkie and this other film also. No, he was not in Guru. He
the
was in
Guru,
Bombay
no.
Talkie. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was in Bombay Talkie. Yeah, Shashi I knew, and knew Shashi from before. He'd come to our house during film festivals. I think my father also knew him. But I got to know him during Bombay Talkie, and the whole thing was like a love affair. That film. It was my very first film. There's something always
Mm.
very inspirational in your very first film. And it's like you're making love to the film
Right.
almost. Um, and Jennifer was, she was like an alter ego almost.
Ah.
There were times when I was so absolutely stunned because she was thinking exactly what I was thinking.
Mm.
I'll give you a small instance. When she comes and, she's had this quarrel with Eddie, and she comes and there's a storm and the latch of the door is broken and the lovers are kissing. And she stands there and she realizes that, oh, they had been using my place as their love nest. So I was asked by my chief assistant, uh, what is she thinking at that time? What should her expression be? I said, no, don't ask me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't intrude. He
Right.
said, what do you mean you can't intrude? She's a character that you've created. I said, yes, she's a character that I've created, but she's taken on a life of her own and I can't intrude there. There's this storm and she's just had this fight with Eddie, and
Yeah.
oh, it'll all fall into place. And I had this tremendous faith and trust in Jennifer's abilities, not only as an actor, but in her ability to understand, in her sensitivity, you know.
Mm.
And then I was sitting leafing through the script, and I heard my assistant go up to Jennifer, who he was very fond of, and she was very fond of him too. And she said, Jennifer, what do you think Miss Tonham is thinking? And she said, oh, please don't ask me that now. I don't know. And she almost echoed the same words. And I was sitting there and thinking, my God, oh my God, she's saying the same things. She's saying, I've just had a fight with my brother, and I just come and I see this. The only thing I said to her, my only direction to her was,
Mm.
you realize what they've been doing, but you've been in love yourself in your youth and you forgive them.
Right.
And that comes through in her expressions. How she forgives them, very subtle, very, very subtle. Jennifer never did anything over the top. Uh, I mean, it's difficult to find. I can only think of two actors that I've worked with who come close: Shabana Azmi and Konkona Sen Sharma.
Yeah. And they are really incredible actors. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like?
There is
Yeah.
also a very, very brilliant actor, actually. Uh, the one I used as Nikhilesh in
Ah.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj. He was another actor like that. I mean, you just had to say one word and he got it. In the scene where she comes, when she tells him that she doesn't know whose baby it is, and
Mm.
there's this reconciliation scene. All I said to him that yes, there is the reconciliation. Just remember, the reconciliation is not complete. He said, okay,
Right.
then let me just do the take once more. And then what he did was he laid his head back and he held her with one arm, and the second arm he wouldn't put around her. So I said, the reconciliation is not complete. Just remember that. So these are the little things that make one, you know, I don't know, it's just so wonderful.
You know, um, Konkona spoken about the fact that early on you exposed your children to film festivals and all kinds of films. I mean, even films that perhaps were not meant for them at that age. You took them. She remembers you taking her to the Moscow Film Festival, I think, when she was very young. Can you talk about the importance of film festivals, the place that they've had in your own life and career, and how they have sort of earned you this very loyal audience around the world, actually?
Oh, thank you. Rajiv, the thing is that we are completely bombarded with mainstream cinema. At least in my childhood and even in my daughter's childhood, we were bombarded with it. I mean, so much so that we've forgotten our own folk traditions, except when they have been used very intelligently by some brilliant music directors from Bollywood. But if you think of a song today, if you play Antakshari, can you think of an indigenous song which doesn't belong to a film?
No, it's almost
No
impossible.
longer.
Yeah.
No longer. When I was teaching once, I took a few classes at MIT, and one of the girls over there said, that can I go today early, ma'am? I have a fancy dress party. I said, how lovely. What are you going as? So she said, I'm going in Indian dress. So I said, what do you mean by Indian dress? There is no one Indian dress.
Right.
Just as there is no one Indian music, there's no one Indian language. There's this fantastic diversity which makes us so rich. She said, I'm going as Aishwarya Rai in Devdas. I said, but that's not Indian dress.
Right.
In fact, that's a mishmash. It's not even a proper Bengali dress. I don't mean to malign anyone, but this is a fact, I mean, I suppose that has to be done in popular cinema. I don't know. But all I'm trying to say is that film festivals give you an exposure to another kind of film. If you go to the house of, say, an Ustad or you say Pandit, classical music, you find even the children know the sargams of ragas and so on. How? Because they're continuously exposed to it. They may be listening to other kinds of music also. They may be listening to bands, but they also know all of this because they're continuously exposed. Now, our children from childhood, and I've gone course, I've been saying it for the last 50 years, that films from childhood should be part of the school curriculum, and good film, festival films, because you already have the market full of mainstream cinema, which is fine. I mean, mainstream cinema provides employment to thousands of people. There's mainstream cinema everywhere, all over the world, and some mainstream cinema is very good. But the point is that there is an alternative kind of cinema also. And if you have never have any exposure to it, then your choice is limited by the market, not by yourself.
Right. Yeah. Did you have words of wisdom when Konkona was going to direct her first film? What a lovely film that is. The
Call
Death in
me
the Gunj.
every day. She used to call me every day before that. She was worried about silly little things like right and left. So I said, you have assistants, Coco. You don't have to worry about right and left. As long as you can you see the pictures in your head? And I knew she could because I'd read her script. And I saw what a beautifully, image-wise,
Yeah,
it was
cinematic. It's so
constructed
cinematic.
It was completely constructed image-wise. I said, all that you have to do is to tell the cameraman what you're seeing inside your head. His job to do it after that. This reminds me of the graveyard scene in 36 Chowringhee Lane. Ashok said, well, ma'am, what lens do you want? I said, I don't know. So he said, what do you mean you don't know? You're the director. I said, listen, I want it to be raining. I wanted to wear a black dress and have a black umbrella. I want the priest in black, everything in black. And I want everything to be sort of blurred. And I want Jennifer to be very, very, very seen very clearly. So he said, ma'am, you're talking about a telephoto lens.
Right.
So he said, you just tell me What you're seeing inside your head, it's my job to give you that.
Right.
Today, of course, I know exactly what I want. But at that time, I would say, no, do you like this lens? I would say, no, show me other options.
Mm.
Then I would see other options. And at that time, we used to look through the camera.
Right.
And Ashok used to let me actually look through the camera, operate it right through, except during the shot.
Mm.
That really helped me understand. And I was already taking still photographs before that. So I
Mm.
knew. But with Konkona also, she takes very, very good photographs, by the way. She's a very good
Uh-huh.
still photographer also. She keeps sending me her photographs, and I think she should do an exhibition. Maybe we should do a joint exhibition sometime.
Yeah.
But Coco used to call me up about silly little things like that, you know. Uh, but because she was actually, she never showed it, but I think actually there was a certain nervousness, a kind of nervousness that is actually very good for the film because it's a very
Mm.
energetic nervousness. And she used to call me as the one point of reference that she had.
You were also a voice in the film. I don't know if anyone remembers you. Didn't you? Weren't you Shutu's
Yeah,
mother on the phone?
that's right. That's right. She wanted me to dub for Shutu's mother.
The other theme, Aparna, and correct me if I'm wrong. I find that another theme that is fairly common in some of your films is the themes of sisterhood. It's true of Sonata in very different circumstances. Sonata, but also Paromitar Ek Din, which is such an unusual sort of woman bonding story because it's the story of a mother-in-law and the woman who was her daughter-in-law.
That's right. And the area is left gray because,
That's right.
there's a scene of them having a bath together.
Right.
So I didn't
Yeah.
want to. I like leaving gray areas, and I
Hmm.
like letting people. If you're going to spell out every single thing,
Yeah.
then what is the audience going to think about? They've been told everything. So it's very nice when you leave things unsaid and leave it to the imagination of the audience. So the sisterhood scene was there. Do you remember in Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, there was
Mm.
Rahul used to call it the sorority scene, where in the
Uh-huh.
bus these women are together and
That's
nobody
right.
can speak the other's language, and they use
Mm.
sign language and so on. Have you eaten? Do you have food? Where is your
Right.
husband, etc. And so there is the scene in the bus. So this is a kind of sisterhood scene also. Yes, I do believe that there is a sisterhood among women.
And in fact, even 15 Park Avenue, which was actually about two sisters. Again, a very
Yes,
different situation, of course.
yes,
Um,
very.
you said Shabana is one of your favorites. Can you talk about that? I mean, what is it like, sort of directing her? She's a wonderful actress, but as are you, and you're a great director. What is that? What is that sisterhood like, if you like?
With Shabana, see, let me compare Shabana and Jennifer.
Uh-huh.
Jennifer she was the producer's wife, so she was always very concerned about everything. Shabana had nothing to do with the production, but
Correct.
she was always, she's a director's actress. She's always very concerned about everything in the film, about why she would say, for instance, Reena, is something worrying you? Because
Mm.
the director is also fallible. The director is having to handle so many variables at the same time. And you have actors who just don't bother about that, and they will sort of say, okay, call me when the shot is ready. They will rehearse, they will give their best, but they will not be worried about anything else. Shabana is a team player. You know,
Mm.
she constantly worries about everything in the film, concerned, involved, and you feel that you have somebody on your side. Constantly you feel that you have somebody on your side who's ready to look at your problems, who's ready to even try to help you solve your problems.
Right.
Apart from the fact that she's just she can't help being such a fantastic actor.
Right. I know we have questions from the audience, from the cinephiles who are on, but I'm going to ask you one last question before we open it. Rinadi, what do you, do you notice any significant changes in your own, in the themes that interest you, in your filmmaking approach, your vision, since you began directing? You spoke about how the very fact that times have changed and the world has changed and society has changed and India has changed, and that certainly reflects in what you want to say. But have you noticed any significant changes within yourself as a director over the years?
Okay, let me say something to you.
Indeed.
I wrote a piece as I was asked to give the annual Ray Memorial Lecture, and my theme was the development of a master. How, when he started, he was a young man. India had just become independent, and how he had all the dreams that he shared with all the Indians. How he actually set why did he set it in rural India? He didn't know rural India. But
Right.
apart from the fact that he had illustrated this book, etc., which gave him the images, illustrated a children's edition of Fateh Panchali, he illustrated that. He also wanted to be inclusive. He wanted to include the India that lives in its villages,
Right.
And you find a very Chekhovian Ray over there, very Chekhovian. But as he gets older and as he gets more and more disillusioned, you find the bitterness coming out in films like John Warren, the realization that there is so much corruption. And towards the end, in fact, all his films are more about trying to change, a desperate effort to try and change. In fact, his later films are more full of messages than his earlier films were. Now, I don't want to get into the trap of putting messages, quote unquote messages, in my films. I don't like that. But I want to make people aware that certain things exist. And I want to do it through the individual, through the pains, the sorrows, the joys, the sorrows, the travails of the individual, so that they can follow and I want to give those individuals a face, like in Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, for instance. See, all the time you hear about collateral damage. You hear that so many people have been killed, so many people have been killed. They're all numbers. These numbers don't have faces.
Yeah.
But in Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, the old man, played by Bhisham Sahani, had a face. His wife, played by Surika Sikri, had a face. Now, the moment you give these people a face, then, which is what Ray did to the rural poor. Famously, I think Nargis had said about him that he's selling India's poverty. I said, on the contrary, he's dignifying India's poverty by giving them a face and letting the audience identify with them. So I think that's the way I've changed, because I am a part of the flux. You see, I'm part of the change that's taking place in the world. I'm not outside it. So naturally I'm reacting to it, and I want to make people aware of certain things, because I see a lot of knee-jerk reactions all the time around me to everything. For instance, those 4 people that were killed, remember, in Hyderabad, I think, the 4 suspected rapists who were just killed in an encounter. Now, I know a lot of people who said very good and they showered flowers, etc. But they never considered the fact that we have a justice system, and that justice system has to be kept alive. Otherwise, you don't need a judiciary. You can have the police tackling everything. And I remember one actress saying, very good, I'm glad they did that. So I don't support rapists, but I think every single human being has to be considered as a human being, no matter what he or she has done. So these are some of the things that it's what changes is really your vision of the world. Your world view changes.
And that, of course, inevitably shows up in the films.
It's bound to.
Of course. Lovely. Okay, we're going to take a few questions. If we can unmute Tony Sethi. Tony Sethi has a question.
Hello, Aparna ji.
Hi, it's Aparna actually.
Aparna ji, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. I am so impressed to see the body of works you've done. I just wanted to know, in your opinion, has the storytelling changed in today's time, especially with the growth of OTT platforms and the way I see the attention span of people drop down so much? They want everything to be so quick. Has that affected art the way it should be?
It has. I think it has. That's a very, very perceptive question. It has, because the attention span of people, when there's so many choices, see, it's different when you go to see a film in a theater, in a darkened theater, with all those people watching with you. Then you can't switch channels. Yeah, you can just switch. You don't like something, if it doesn't grab you in the first 3 or 4 minutes, you switch. It happens to me too. Either you have to be a director at the level of Inaritu or something like that, where, for instance, when I saw Roma, that film, all that the woman was doing was sweeping the driveway. And in the water, all kinds of things, including an aeroplane flying, were reflected. Now that visual grabbed me and I couldn't move away from the film. So either you have to have a talent of that caliber, or you have to be extremely fast-paced in your storytelling. This thing that we had earlier, for instance, 36 Chowringhee Lane, I don't know how people would react to it today, though I believe that people still cry over it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, but this capturing of moods, taking your leisurely pace to capture moods, I think that has changed.
Right. Okay. Can we take a question from Lydia, please? Lydia Ostepiv.
Hello. You don't shy away from uncomfortable and relevant topics. Do you ever watch films purely for entertainment?
It depends always on what you're entertained by. Mm-hmm. Because, I can't think of entertainment as a separate thing from something that I enjoy.
Okay.
Some people are entertained by just mindless rom-coms. Some people are entertained by Roma.
Yeah.
Some people are entertained by Mozart. Some people are entertained by just the latest popular band. Depends on what you consider entertainment.
What have you last watched that you really enjoyed, if I can add to Lydia's question? During lockdown, did you see something during lockdown that you enjoyed?
Oh yes, I did see. For instance, let me just try and remember. I can't remember all of them. One that I saw was called Maudie, that I loved. Yes. Maudie, Maudie. It was about, there was Ethan Hawke in it.
That's right.
And it was about this folk artist, his wife, the one woman that he married, who was severely arthritic, but used to paint. That was one of the films that I absolutely loved. There was another one, the name I can't remember immediately. Then there was a short limited series called Staircase, which was also wonderful. There are many, many interesting things now.
Okay. Thank you. Those are good recommendations to check out. Thank you. And thank you, Lydia. If we can take a question from Anubha Sarkar. Anubha, you have a question?
My question to you is, do you think the space for women filmmakers and storytellers has expanded over the past years?
Yes, I think so, because there are now so many very good women directors. Earlier, you had to count them on your fingers. You really had to count them on your fingers. But now, if you think about it, you can, come up with names so quickly of so many different women filmmakers now. It's just amazing. I'm very happy about it.
Lovely. Neeraj Nanda.
Hello, Aparna.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello. I'm good. Thanks.
So nice to see you and to hear about things from you. I have a very simple question, and is that what role should a cinema person play when the idea of India is under threat, as you talked about it in the beginning? What role should
Well, you know,
play?
yeah. Well, there's no should about it actually.
Or maybe.
It's very difficult to say what one should do, but it's actually completely up to the filmmaker and his or her conscience. If they feel that the idea is under threat, there are people who don't want to, how should I put it? They don't want to put themselves at any kind of risk. There are people who are afraid to talk, perhaps with good reason. I don't know. I'm not being judgmental. But I think that it's important for a true artist to try to reflect her times, at least make people aware.
Kanishka Arora, if we could take Kanishka's question.
Hi, it's great to have you guys here. My question is that, Aparna ma'am, I've seen like two of your movies have got like the title with the street address, like 36 Chowringhee Lane and like 15 Park Avenue. So like, is there any special story behind it? Like while you were keeping like any?
Not really, no. It's just that 36 Chowringhee Lane, because it was in English, I wanted to give it a name where, the word Chowringhee is known even in colonial times. It has a colonial association, So I wanted to keep that. So I just, and that was supposed to be actually a sort of, working title more than anything else. Shashi had said it first, you can't have a name like 36 Chowringhee, ridiculous. So I said, all right, let's use it as a working title and let's go on. Then by the time we finished the film, Shashi said, no, now everybody knows it as 36 Chowringhee Lane, so it can't be anything else. So that remained. 15 Park Avenue was important as an address because 15 Park Avenue actually was a kind of symbol of something that she was looking for. Something each of us has our own 15 Park Avenue that we're always looking for and can never find.
Right. We're going to take one last question from Shivangi Bhaumik.
Hi.
Hello.
You made my question. I'm very nervous. Sorry. You made your debut appearance in Teen Konna back in 1961. My question to you is, how would you describe your experience being a debut at the tender age of 15, and that too with the legendary Satyajit Ray? Was it just giddy excitement as a teenager or just too surreal? And I very, very quickly want to add that my grandmother very excitedly called me from Kolkata today to convey that she's a huge admirer of your work. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, I had gone with the expectations of acting that I would, because I'd won some acting awards in school when I used to act in school plays. So I had gone with expectations that I would act. But Ray was always, he told me what to do because he really saw me as a very young person, which I was. And he told me what to do. He knew exactly what he wanted. And I gave in. I completely submitted and surrendered. There was only one scene in which I thought I acted, because I was supposed to be standing with my squirrel near a window, inside the room was supposed to be my friend, whose sister was being inspected by a prospective bridegroom, right? So now, usually the squirrel would wriggle out of my hand all the time. But that day, the squirrel just refused to budge from my hand. And as a very young person, I was terrified of a shot being, rejected because of my bad performance. So I pretended that I was fascinated with the squirrel, and I put it down on the windowsill and acted as if, oh my God, suddenly I realized that it's gone in, slipped in. So I remember the art director saying, holona, meaning, that was not. But Ray was laughing a lot. Satyajit Ray was laughing a lot. And he said, I rather like that. I rather like that. And that shot is there in the film. So I think that was the part that I enjoyed most, actually. But other times he would tell me things like when she's fallen in love with her husband, she realized, he didn't tell me that you realized that you've fallen in love with your husband. He told me you've lost interest in the squirrel. But just put your finger, your thumb into your mouth, look away into the distance and think of lovely, wonderful things. I was 14 years old and I think I could understand what he's trying to say, because 14-year-olds are full of romantic dreams. So I knew what to do. But this was the kind of way that he directed me. Put your finger in your mouth and think of lovely, wonderful things.
Thank you so much, Reenadi. Thank you very, very much. I really want to say that I think what really, the reason for your longevity, your, the enduring quality of your films is really the deep understanding you have of the human condition, and we really enjoy that in the films. You're able to sort of really capture how people think and what people feel, which is this rare gift, and it shows up in every single film of yours. Thank you so much. Both personally and on behalf of the festival, the many thanks. So much gratitude for doing this with us today. We hope you will be at the festival. We hope you can come to the festival. Maybe with the next film.
I really hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. But thank you for beautiful films, for beautiful acting. Titli is another one of my favorite films. Even in films where you're not the writer or the director, where you're just acting, I think you bring that really great understanding of how people are and how they feel so beautifully. Many thanks. I'm going to hand it back to the festival director, Meetu Bhamik-Longe, who will say thank you, but much gratitude, and this was so enriching, genuinely. Thank you so much.
Wonderful for me too. Thank you, Rajeev. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Aparna ma'am. I really hope we can welcome you. And when you said that you used to take Konkana to all the film festivals, it reminded me of my father, who's a huge film lover. He used to make me volunteer at Sirifort every year at the International Film Festival, because I'm born and brought up in Delhi. And I remember we were in school and Paroma had come, and it had really polarized the audience because I think it was so ahead of its time, and the Rakhi taking control of her sexuality was completely unthinkable especially to the Bengali men. And my Mashi and mom and all, they were like huge debates at home, and I was very young, but I couldn't understand why a film was causing such heated debates. And after many years, I revisited that film like you do with a lot of your films, and I'm still in awe of how path-breaking and ahead of its time and beautifully feminist without screaming it from rooftop it is. So, and that is just one of your many films. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let me, apropos Paroma, let me just tell you a short anecdote that after the film was over and the audience gradually left, they were very divided.
Yes.
3 little old ladies came up to me, and they looked this side, that side to see if anyone was watching them, and they said, "Bless you, my daughter." And they went, because they obviously had very deprived lives.
No, so I thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I really hope we get a chance to welcome you to our festival, hopefully next year. And, and it'll be so nice to have you here. Yes, and lots of love from all of us in Melbourne. And Rajeev, as always, thank you for being so amazing. And
thank you. If I could, may I just just one moment, I'm going to jump in to say that Ghawre Bairey Aaj is streaming on Amazon Prime Video. So anyone that hasn't seen it, that's where you watch it.
Please watch
and if you have access to the Hoi Choi app, a lot of these films are on the Hoi Choi app. I've had a chance to watch a lot of those films. I don't know if the app is available in Australia, but a lot of the great ones, a lot of the earlier ones are on the app.
Yeah.
So please do watch
And
it.
Ghawre Bairey Aaj is also on Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Thank you everyone who took part in our beautiful IFFM Zoom chat. Rajeev, thank you. You're the best. Aparna ma'am, thank you so much. And it's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you. See you everyone. Bye-bye.